Hello, everybody, and welcome to another spicy, sizzling hot episode of the Chocolate Bros podcast. You're here with Brian and Adam, and if you're watching the video, we are looking pretty bald, bro.
Yeah,
Pretty
both we're
bald.
pretty bald and pretty. I don't know if this is as spicy as it is sneezy because we're both a little under the weather, and we're there's going to be
Yeah,
some hacking and some coughing, possibly some. This could be the first episode featuring nasal
yeah,
drippage, but
some nose blowing,
we're
blowing the
gonna work
nose.
through it. We're gonna work through it
Yeah,
because you know what? The listeners deserve it, Adam.
they do.
Um, and that points out the fact that he is Adam and I am Brian, and we are the Chocolate Bros. And you can find us at fortunatochocolate.com if you want to find any of our delicious confections online. And if you find yourself in the Seattle area in the Pacific Northwest, come by our store in Issaquah, Washington, our two stores. We have two retail establishments in Issaquah, Washington. Do we not, Adam?
We do. All that you have said is accurate. And if you ever wanted to come in and meet the Chocolate Bros face to face, and
That's
just
right.
really,
Just
I would,
schnoz to
I,
schnoz
hey,
and get
I
some
would,
knees up in your grill, you know?
I would recommend bringing sunglasses for the reflection of the light coming off of our heads.
If I wasn't literally reflecting light off
I
my
know.
forehead right now on the screen, I would disagree with you, but you are correct, sir.
I would be cautious about bringing in a magnifying glass or anything like this because you might end up burning. We might end up burning something.
Leave your ant terrarium at home because we they might get sizzled in the reflection of our
Yeah, yeah. But Brian and I work.
It looks like you're at maybe like a number 2 buzz cut, number
I
1.
do number two.
You got a number 2.
I once shaved my head the same way you have your head shaved, and this is
Mhm.
no joke. I wasn't living in the house I live now. I was living in an apartment when I did this. I
Mhm.
walked out. There was a little girl who was our neighbor who I would see running in the hallways. I walked out. First time I ever shaved my head, the little girl looked at me and started laughing. And since
Now,
that time,
how old was this little girl?
she might have been 5. So old enough to
consummate
have,
consummate truth telling age, that's for
yeah,
sure.
old enough to have seen seen a few people with shaved heads and to have an opinion on whether I look good or not with my head shaved.
Mhm.
You look good. I believe my head is too small,
Well, by the way, I have a pinhead. It's well known, but here's the
but you're
thing you gotta
short.
do. Well, that's unkind, Adam. Many people would say average height compared to a big meathead like yourself. But here's the thing that I think you'll find. Now, I started with a number 3 buzz cut years and years ago. After I think I've related this before. I got out of the Army and I was like, I can grow my hair out as long as I want. I'm going to do that. And I started growing my hair, and I flash cut to a year later of me just wearing hats all the time and having bad hair every day for 200 straight days. And I looked at myself in the mirror and said, why are you doing this to yourself? You look terrible. And I went out, got a clipper, buzz cut my head with a number 3, and haven't grown it out since then. And then I went from 3 to 2 to 1. And then right before I moved back to the United States, I went to a barbershop in Lima, Peru, and got shaved bald for the first time, and have stuck with that. So you're at a 2 now. It will be a 1, and then at some point, I think what you're going to find is that your head there's almost no difference between what you're doing now
So
and
I can yeah, we'll see what happens.
yeah.
I'm tall. We both have pinheads, so we
Mhm.
must have gotten that from our mom. We must have
Mhm.
come from a long line of small-headed men on
Yeah,
our
because
mom's side of the family.
your dad's got a veritable
He's
basketball.
bulbous.
He's Which, speaking of your dad, I was just thinking about it. So your dad's in town, our third business partner, in terms of the podcast, our silent partner, Dan Pearson. And you guys came over to the office the other day. And normally, if I saw Dan Pearson, I'd give him a big hug because I don't get to see him in person that often. But I said, stand back. You may not want to hug me. I just got sick. And I might be contagious. So keep your distance. And Dan looked at me and said, we still not dyeing your beard, huh, Brian? First thing he said, didn't even say hello. Still not dyeing your beard. Boy, you're sure showing showing your age. And I thought, man, that's a rough way to start a conversation.
My dad, he's a good man. He's a tough man. He's an adventurer, an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You can't knock him down. He keeps getting back up. But he is a vain man. He cares about his looks. And everybody's different, but he always gives me a rundown of his weight. So, hey, I'm down 5 pounds, man.
He was looking good. By the way, he was looking good. I was gonna tell him he was looking thin and great until he started off by telling me how old and haggard I look.
Yeah. No, so he dyes his beard.
Yeah,
He's
I feel
always-
so.
and he's in
That's
great
just
shape.
that's just by way of explaining why I feel justified in talking about his big melon head because
Yeah.
he
So he's got big melon
kind of
head, but
started
so
off with me.
but look, I'm 6'4" with a pinhead.
Mhm,
So it's, let's say you and me have the same size head, but
mhm,
proportional to your,
right,
your short body, your head
mhm.
looks normal.
My
Whereas-
my average non-elongated, weird, funky,
Yeah.
monkey body,
But
right?
based on my tall, lean, athletic build, my smaller
You're-
head looks disproportional. So,
Dad bod, dad bod. Yeah.
so, but so I
I'm sorry,
leave a
I
little,
coughed when I said that. You got a dad bod, Adam.
so I leave a little bit of hair on there just to sort of fill out the size of my head, so it doesn't look quite so small. So little girls don't laugh at me.
I
They
gotta
do.
I gotta
They
be
do.
real honest with you,
Yeah.
Adam. They're gonna find
They're
something.
laughing at me.
Yeah, they're gonna find something because that's
I
the
think they're,
nature.
I think
the
they're laughing
nature.
in the chocolate shop because they're having a good time drinking free hot chocolate. They're laughing at my
They're
pinhead.
like, it's weird how all these girls come in and start laughing at what a good time they're having, but they always seem to cover their mouths and kind of side glance at me
Yeah.
when they're doing it. I can't figure it out.
Hey girls, if you like the free frozen bananas dipped in chocolate, you don't have to
You
keep
don't-
it a secret.
You don't have to look at me and kind of scoff and laugh when you're talking
Yeah.
about it. You can just come on and say it.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm gonna end up shaving my head, Brian. I don't know, but
All
you
right.
look great. You got a good looking shaved head.
Well,
And
thank you.
also, there's something about the shape of a head too when you shave it bald.
Yes,
head
no,
that you
I'm,
have to
I'm,
take into
I'm
account.
fortunate. I'm fortunate that I don't have any massive irregularities. And you're right. I do have a small head. By the way, this is scientifically proven. I'm not trying to like get down on myself. I have to wear sun hats religiously now because I've been told by the doctors no more sun to the head. The jungle, the Amazon jungle, did a little damage to the dermis on the top of my head, and I'm not permitted to go out without a hat anymore. And so I have to go get hats from time to time, and it's been well and amply proven that a normal men's hat comes down to about my eyebrows and over
Hey,
my ears. I
if
cannot
I-
wear
If I try to wear one of my dad's hats,
Mhm.
I swim in it. My head swims around in it. He's got a big head, dude.
I
And it's a
know.
handsome head. It's a big, handsome. He looks great.
Well, I got very lucky because I saw him go from balding to taking control of the issue and shaving it bald, and that gave me
Hey,
that gave me the impetus to be able to buzz cut and then go bald. And I got lucky that I have a non-deformed shaved
hey,
head.
since we're going long on baldness, I remember when my dad shaved his head. I
do
don't know
too.
if you remember. For the longest time, he had this terrible comb over.
Oh gosh.
Oh man.
And his wasn't even bad as comb overs go, but he just was losing it and was just letting it go without.
It got to
acting
the
on it.
point, and it got to the point where he was carrying around hairspray in his back pocket. He would carry around hairspray with him.
Ouch.
It was outrageous. And he would sneak into a bathroom and spray down his hair. And it wasn't a side comb over; it was a forward comb over,
Right.
sort of like
Right.
a Trump thing.
Yeah.
He had to
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of bring it forward.
I
and
mean, I don't think you
forward.
can limit Trump to just forward. It kind of goes in every different
But
direction.
if you have a
yeah.
forward comb over, you can't just brush it forward. You got to kind of swoop it.
Right. He's
Yeah,
got
just
he had a swoop. He definitely had a swoop going. I
You had
recall.
to swoop it. Now my father-in-law Joaquin, who lives in
Mhm.
northern Peru because my
Yes.
wife is Peruvian,
Mhm.
he for a long time had a really paltry comb over that was just 5 or 6 strands, and he
Mhm.
also had to hairspray it down. And one thing I noticed about a guy with a comb over, both he and my father did this. They're always touching their head. They're just kind of get a lay of the land up there.
Well, they've always got to be. They're dealing with
you
it.
just gotta be
at all
you gotta be
times.
very
They're
attentive.
dealing with it. Yeah. It's a well. At least you're doing the right thing, which is taking control of what's happening up there by buzz cutting it. And
Yeah.
so I give you kudos for that at a relatively young age.
Thank you, Brian.
Kudos for that.
And
I think it looks
I'm-
good on you. I by the way, I never saw you bald, but I think the shape of your head doesn't suggest to me that you've got any shape issues. You're just saying it's a size thing.
It's a shape thing too. We're on the Zoom call right now. When
Mhm.
I see you in the shop tomorrow morning,
Okay.
you can do a detailed review,
Excellent.
sort of a phrenological review.
Maybe
of
I'll
my
do
head.
maybe I'll do a guest email for all the readers out there and kind of just do a deep dive on the phrenology of Adam Pearson.
Write your
Yeah.
own emails, Brian. All right, that's
Okay.
my space. I write the emails in that space. Okay. Brian,
Come on, Adam.
I'm not looking for any guest contributors, Brian. All right, back off.
It's time for a guest blog post, Adam. Come on, I'm your guy.
All right, so Brian, today
Yes.
I wanted to. I've been writing a lot lately about the goings on over in
You
the.
are a writing machine. You
But
write.
I've been writing a lot. I've been writing a lot about
Yeah.
the goings on over in the shop.
Yes,
Because
I've
now
been reading
mostly,
it. Very poignant, by the way. Your conversation with the elderly couple. Good
I
stuff.
like, I really, I don't know how you are, but I really like to sit down and talk to older people. I really do. It's something it's just a thing that I like because this is why I also think it's good for kids to have a grandparent.
Mhm.
Are you, is your, yeah, because Amara's in Peru right now. She spent a lot of time with her grandmother, right?
She's spending a lot of time with her mom's parents,
With her mom's parents, yeah.
with my mother and father-in-law
She's living in the same city with them.
in
Whereas
the same house.
our mother lives in San Diego, so she lived in the same house.
She's living in the same
So
house. She talks to our mom as much as possible and my dad as much as possible, but she's getting much more in-person time with her maternal grandparents. Yeah.
one thing that I was noticed is a grandparent knows. Oh, you muted yourself. All right, you muted yourself because you're coughing. Um, so a grandparent knows what it means to raise a kid from a baby to an adult.
Mm,
Whereas a parent really only knows what it means to raise a kid from a baby to whatever age they are right now.
that's a good point. Yeah.
Right. So you really don't know, like, you haven't seen the whole cycle. Like, how does
Yeah.
the stuff you're doing right now end up turning out when somebody's 40?
Right.
So I like a grandparent for that reason, because they know the long-term effects,
Right.
and they can give
Sure.
some wisdom to a kid that a parent isn't equipped to give.
Well, there's no doubt that sitting down and talking to a person, to one of your elders, can be a magnificent experience, and I do like to do it. But in general, you're much more apt
I'm
to
more
just
out,
sit
yeah,
down. You're much more apt to just sit down and have a conversation with almost anybody.
with anybody. But in particular, I like, so, I wrote about talking to an 86-year-old guy. I like
Mhm.
talking to an 86-year-old because that guy, he's done the whole cycle almost. And looking back, he could tell you just quickly, this is really all that matters,
Yeah.
which
Well,
you
and
can't get from almost anybody else.
the line in your email when he said that just be good to your kids, because look, I'm 86 and I'm still talking about how my dad did me. Like, that was brilliant, Adam.
And I was surprised too. He was just looking for someone to talk to his dad about. I didn't put it in there, but he mentioned that he's living in a senior citizen home or
Mhm.
in a senior center. And I said, well, that must be good because you got people to talk to. And he said, yeah, I can't really, like, no one wants to hear me complaining about my dad, but that's what I really want to do. He said that to me. I was running down his face. He's like, no one, they don't want to hear me complain about my dad, but I want to complain about him to somebody, but nobody will give me an ear to listen to. So
That's really funny. That
I
sounds
was
like a
able to
really
be
funny
his
guy.
ear. Oh no.
I hope I get to meet that guy sometime. That's fun. That's a
I hope he comes back around.
great
And
story.
his wife was hilarious. His wife
Awesome.
was really, really funny and cool. So so I've been mostly producing content about talking to people kind of around the chocolate shop, but
Mhm.
I wanted to swing back and maybe talk about Campo
Mm.
life. And one thing you've mentioned to me in the past, sorry about coughing, but we told everybody that was a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody doesn't feel like they got warned, this is your second and final warning. We're going to be hacking and coughing.
Yeah.
What you may have
So-
heard Adam refer. I actually muted because I had a particularly bad one going on earlier. We're definitely both in the hacking and coughing up funk.
So, one of the things from traveling and doing business overseas that you learn is that everybody's the same. The environment might be different and the cultures
Mhm.
might be different, but basically everybody's sort of got the same end goals. Trying to live a
Mhm.
good life, like we said,
Right.
trying to raise your kids right, trying to have good relationships,
Mhm.
friendships. And you've always mentioned that being out in Campo, out in the jungle where we buy cacao, it's basically just the same as it. It's the environment's different, but the way people live is just a microcosm of people anywhere. Some people are
Yeah.
lazy, some people work hard, some people are religious, some people are atheists, some people have good marriages, some people are drunks, some people are really sweet, some people are really smart, some people are lazy. Like, it's just like that anywhere. So
Yeah, it really is fascinating to me that the proportion, I think, in daily life as we go around, I think you can go to the supermarket and look at all the folks standing in line waiting to pay for their groceries. You could probably make a pretty fair guess that 92% of them or something are just normal, good-hearted, regular people, and 1% are extraordinary human beings, and 2% are extraordinarily bad people, and 3 or 4% are just kind of run-of-the-mill jerks that you wouldn't want to deal with. That's your dad calling me, by the way. He's not aware, apparently, that we're doing our podcast right now.
yeah, he'll probably keep
So
going.
what's that?
He's probably going to keep
He
going.
might war dial me as we're having this
Yeah, we'll
podcast.
see. Although that's
Certainly a
more of mom's.
possibility.
That's really mom's.
That's more of our mom's thing for
Yeah.
sure.
All right.
So I think it's about the same anywhere you go. In my experience, it's been just about the same everywhere you go. The vast majority of the farm families and the people that I've met in Campo are average to great people, just normal people doing their thing, just trying to, get through their day and make a living and support their family and send their kids to school and pay their medical bills and just trying to live a life. And there are some really extraordinary people that I've met, like Noe and Don Fortunato. And there are some small percentage of folks out there that I don't really care for, that we just don't get along. And I think they're kind of jerks. And you can go to a farm, and you've been to some farms out there. You walk onto some farms and there's just trash laying all over the place, and they've just don't keep the place neat and clean at all. There's junk laying around, and it's just a mess. And they just don't seem to have that same kind of pride of place. You go to another farm, a neighboring farm, and man, oh man, is everything set up. They've got these metal kind of saucer things on the legs of everything so that rodents don't get up into their storage area. And they've got, chicken wire everywhere it should be, and there's not a trash to be found. And they've kind of got their place landscaped out to where there's an area with some flowers going on, and they've got fruit and you can just see that some people are just kind of slovenly. You can tell who are the party guys. You go to certain farms, and it isn't going to be more than 5 or 10 minutes before they're like, "Hey, you want to have a little snort there?" And they're going to offer you some aguardiente, or jonque.
Yeah.
And then there's other places where they're clearly teetotalers.
What was that second word you said? Jonque?
Jonque, yeah, that's a local word for it. It's a type of aguardiente that they have there in Campo.
And aguardiente it translates to fire water.
Aguardiente is
sugarcane.
It's sugarcane alcohol. It's distilled. It's fermented and distilled sugarcane alcohol.
You ever get into drinking aguardiente?
Yeah. I don't drink to excess much anymore at this point in my life. But
did you like
but
it?
if I get offered, it would be rude to refuse, Adam. Right?
That would be rude.
So my normal line when I get offered alcohol, if I'm in Puerto Ciruelo, as I've mentioned before, I rarely do. I'll always say I'm taking antibiotics or something. But if I'm out in Campo at a farmer's house and they offer me, and by the way, Don Fortunato keeps a bottle around, and he likes to take a snort from time to time. In fact, sometimes I'd bring some to him. When I would be going down from Cajamarca, you enter a part of the highway where there's a few towns that specialize in the production of sugarcane alcohol. And I would sometimes pick up some sweet aguardiente for him from a place that's known for it. They call it Cogollon. This particular type of aguardiente is called Cogollon. And I would take Don Fortunato a bottle of Cogollon from time to time.
Breaking news. Don Fortunato, the namesake of our company, likes a snort of firewater.
Likes to have a little firewater from time to time. He has this special aguardiente that he gets from a friend of his that makes it, that lives further up by the Laguna Azul, and they're very proud of it up there. And he will invite us to have a little shotski sometimes, as an aperitif, as a digestive after lunch.
Have you ever seen Don Fortunato really pour one on? Just really high one on?
I haven't, but I've seen him have maybe 3 and get a certain twinkle in his eye.
Yeah.
And he
already has a little twinkle in his eye.
I have a feeling that when he was younger, Don Fortunato knew his way around a Jonque bottle. Yeah, I think so.
But he's a pretty hard worker, so you can't really be
extraordinarily hard worker.
You can't be a drunk and maintain a farm the way he maintains a farm.
That you could try, but it's tough because his place is orderly. So there are those, and there are those farmers whose farm I'll go to, and the wives will do nothing but incessantly complain about how much the husband drinks, and they'll tell me, like, can you not give him all the money for the cacao? Because give a little to me, because anything you give to him is going straight to Puerto Ciruelo for or over to bet on the rooster fights or anything, and stuff like that. So it's almost the same breakdown in Campo as it is, in my opinion, almost anywhere else. There's this proportion of people. So yeah, it's a microcosm of the world as a whole, shockingly similar to the rest of it.
So that being the case, Bri, I wanted to ask you to maybe see if you could, off the top of your head, no pressure, but these people are listening, so make them good. People are giving us their hard-earned, their valuable and precious time. So they better, entertain them, make them
Uh-huh.
entertaining, please. If you
Right.
could maybe give us a little smattering of stories, and I'm thinking like a sad story, a happy story, an adventurous story.
Okay. Okay.
So you mentioned to me before we got on that you had one recently that I think you said was kind of a sad story.
I have a sad story to relate. Yes, I do.
All right,
So,
let's hear it.
all right. So, the bean processing facility that we had, for many years, and that has now been moved up to to where Noé, the president of the Cacao Growers Association, lives. In that plant, I worked for years, for 10 years, with a great group of guys. Some of it was a revolving cast, and some guys were kind of fixtures there. And my second plant manager, my first one was Edward Ramirez. And we had a falling out, which we then patched up due to some job performance issues of his, and we're now very good friends. After him came Jorge Bermeo. And Jorge is a great guy, very
He's a
good
great
friend
guy.
of mine.
His
I
younger
saw
brother
him when
his younger brother worked for us too.
Miguel, his younger brother, worked for us, and this story is actually about Miguel. Jorge came on, and after Jorge became the plant manager, the second one before the current Melquiades, Jorge, great friend of mine, and he brought his younger brother Miguel onto the crew. And Miguel also is a personal friend and worked for us for many years. And shortly after I came to the United States in 2018, Miguel Bermeo, Miguel, Jorge, by the way, continues to be a very good friend of mine. I just saw him when I was down there. He brought Miguel on, and Miguel, great worker, rock solid citizen, just a good guy,
Soft
good
spoken, kind of a cool, soft spoken
soft
guy.
spoken. You knew Miguel.
Yep.
And cool guy, hard worker, quiet, industrious.
Cool, handsome.
Handsome good looking guy. And he got together with a lady that lives up in Cruce Naranjo. And is that right? Cruce Naranjo? Yeah, I believe so. No one is listening can possibly
Cruce,
about that.
Cruce usually signifies
It's a place where two roads. It's a junction.
Junction.
Yeah, so this is the road split on the way up to La Lima on the southeast side of the canyon. And they had a kid together, and shortly after I came back to the United States, Miguel got real sick. And he ended up being in a hospital in Jaén, and Oscar Ayala, our operations manager, asked if the company could do something. And so I authorized Oscar to have a little fundraiser. And so we gave a bunch of money, and we also went out and encouraged other people in the town to give, and we matched it, and we ended up giving a bunch of money through Oscar and Jorge to Miguel's medical expense fund. And Miguel had a liver issue, and he was on the edge of life and death for months. And it was very expensive, and they weren't exactly sure what was going on. And really, everybody sort of said Miguel's not going to make it, but he did make it. He actually survived this terrible illness, and he recovered, and he was working. And I recently went down with a filmmaking crew to Peru, and Oscar arranged for 2 cars and drivers to drive the shoot around for the whole time. And to my surprise and great pleasure, when our driver showed up in Chiclayo to pick us up, it was Miguel Bermeo, looking hale and healthy and hearty and recovered from his liver problem, and big hug. And he'd regained his weight, and he had, we talked a lot, and I spent the full 7 or 8 days in the car with Miguel, talking, laughing. We had a lot of shared memories, and we talked about them, and it was a great pleasure to be with him. And he really enjoyed the time with the film crew, and he dropped us off at the airport in Chiclayo when we were on the way out, along with the other car, and took a great picture. The 2 drivers, I wasn't in it, the 2 drivers with the film crew. I have that picture, and it's fantastic, and lots of hugs. And I said goodbye to Miguel. And then 3 weeks after I was back here in the United States, Oscar sent me a message and said that Miguel passed away, and he didn't make it. And it wasn't his liver. Something happened with his lungs. And just shortly after
He's young, man. He's in his 30s.
Yeah, he couldn't have been more than 33, 34 years
Yeah,
old,
yeah.
maybe 35.
He's a sweet. I mean, that's a sweet man right there. That's a good
Sweet
dude.
guy, and I'll
So
mention
leaves behind a daughter. Did you
he leaves
say?
behind a son, a young son. I'm not sure. I think he may have had a daughter as well. And so I reached out to Jorge. I haven't heard from him yet, but gosh, I was just with Miguel, and he seemed to be fully recovered and healthy. And my first thought was it the effort of driving us around? Was it something to do with what we did? And Oscar said he didn't think so. Oscar went out to eat ceviche with both the drivers, and he said Miguel seemed fine, but he wasn't really hungry. Something was going on. And a week later, he was gone. And so it's really sad. Leaves a young widow and two young children behind. And of course, he didn't have any sort of savings to leave them, and they're in for a hard road. I'm reaching out to Jorge to see what we can do to assist.
Yeah. Well, and with the new word of mouth program, that I think is going to really pick up in the fall. We could be designating some of those funds to maybe try to help out folks out in Campo who
perhaps we'll be able to do something for the Bermeo family. And poor Jorge, he lost his mom and his brother in the same year, and that's tough. So it's sad.
He lost his mom too.
His mom recently passed, and now his brother passed, and he's having a tough year. Luckily, Jorge's got a wife and kids and a good family and friend network to give him some solace. But it just goes to show you, hug your brother. Tell your friends you love them, because they can just as easily be gone a couple weeks later. I was so glad I got the chance to see Miguel and hang out with him and give him a big hug and tell him how much I enjoyed being with him.
And Miguel in particular, because when I spent time with him, he was a young kind of a stud kid. And we had a bunch of younger sort of stud young men working in the facility.
That's right. That was our profile.
But some of them were pretty brash and cocky and full of themselves. But he was super humble. And just
Miguel wasn't. He wasn't that. He was
always
just a
smiling,
hardworking, mellow, smart, quiet guy. Yeah.
So
we lost a good one.
And here's another thing that everybody has in common, no matter where you are. Almost everybody can point either 1 or 2 degrees removed of some kind of really sad thing that just happened in their family or in a friend's family.
Yeah, I saw you.
Everybody.
You wrote about that the other day, and it was incredibly poignant. And you were so correct.
Everybody at all times has some kind of sad thing that just happened to them. So I'm sorry to hear that, man.
Yeah. So we'll see what we can do by way of who he left behind to do something.
Well, bro, maybe we could bounce right off of that with some kind of a really funny memory that you have.
Let's see. Well, I don't know if I'm ready to go right into funny. Let me
no. Crank it up there, Brian.
Yeah. Okay. How about if
I dry those tears off your eyes?
Yeah.
And let's go straight into something hilarious now.
How about if I stop at the midpoint loading station and talk about something that you mentioned, which is speaking with older people. One year, Oscar and I were out doing our annual Christmas Panettone giveaway. A lot of people listening might know the Italian version, but the Peruvian version is probably not known to them. Panettone is a bread. It's a type of bread that Peruvians available all year. But really,
almost all Peruvians. I don't. Is it a north?
I've never met
Is it a northern thing?
No. Peruvians. As far as I know, Peruvians universally love to eat panettone.
When I was growing up, I had never even heard of. Did you eat panettone growing up?
No, in the U.S. it's a joke. It would be considered fruitcake in the.
It's fruitcake, yeah.
But it's not really. It's bread. It's not cake. It's not as dense.
It's bread with little pieces of dried fruit. With little pieces of dried fruit inside it.
It's a bread a little bit similar to challah bread. If anybody knows what Jewish challah bread is like, it's similar in texture and flavor to challah bread, but it's got little bits of candied fruit in it. Of course, the funny thing is, that's actually not fruit. It's actually candied watermelon rind that they use.
Is it?
Yeah, and they've used food dye to make it different colors. But it's got raisins and little bits of candied fruit in it, and you cut the bread, you eat it, and it's sold in kind of loaves that are maybe
And
8 inches.
it comes in a bag with like a
It
twist
comes in
tie.
a bag or a box with a twist tie, and it's a loaf that's about 8 inches in diameter at the base, and kind of in a cylindrical form, and it's almost like a really big, taller muffin. It's got a kind of a flat base, it's cylindrical, and then it rises up and has a kind of a puffy muffin top, and it's probably 8 inches in diameter by almost a foot tall. I mean, these things are big,
Oh yeah, it's
maybe
big.
10 inches tall, and it's a and they cost about at the current exchange rate, they cost about $6-7, and it's very typical. Certainly in Cajamarca, where I lived for so long, that if you've got like some kind of a gathering, you'll pop open a panettone, you'll cut it up into pieces, and you'll offer panettone with coffee or tea or wine as
When
as
I
a
yeah
as
when
people
I
sit
first got
around.
together with my wife, I found that that in her family they always ate panettone and panettone in the winter. So
Absolutely.
it's
It's
a
more
big
of a
deal.
it's more of a holiday season type thing. So it's typical for companies that are working with lots of different people out in the campo to do a little something for them around the Christmas season. And so one thing that we would always try to do is buy a big quantity of panetones, like 400 or 500 of these things, and go out and distribute them village by village. And we'd sit down and we'd roll up in our truck with 40 panetones, and all the families would come out, and we'd sit around, and they would probably insist on making us some hot chocolate from the local cacao or something, and we'd sit around and talk, and one by one we'd give the people the panettone and thank you, Don Brian, and it was really nice. And I found myself in the little village of Moroponcito. No, I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong. I was in Mano de la Virgen,
Uh-huh.
the hand of the Virgin.
And that's I've written an email that town has the most interesting story about how it got that name.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
remember that email. And so I found myself sitting with the great people of Mano de la Virgen, and we were handing out panetones, and I was sitting against a house, as you do. And I've been to this house a bunch of times, and I knew the farmer. I can't remember the family name of that house, but out came the father, who I'd never met before, and he was well advanced in age, and he seemed to be walking okay at a walking stick, like an actual walking stick, like a wizard style walking stick, not a cane style walking stick. He was holding the midpoint of the walking stick, and came and sat down and said, "Don Brian, what a pleasure to finally meet you." And I said, "Wow, you must be Don," I think it was Elisardio Guevara. I can't remember who it was, but and he sat down, and I said, "Wow, what a pleasure to meet you." And I had this amazing conversation with this elderly gentleman who had been living in this tiny little village in the middle of nowhere in Peru for 40 or 50 years.
So he might have been one of the first generations of guys to even settle out there.
That particular village, he was definitely one of the founders. He probably had been there for 60 or 70 years, actually. And he was well into his 80s and lucid and sharp as a tack. And we sat and had an absolutely wonderful conversation. He told me a little bit about how it was in the old days and about growing up, and how he felt now about being mostly confined to the house, and what he did to pass his days, playing with his grandkids, giving his son advice on sort of crop management, coming out into the yard in the evening sometimes and helping with shucking corn and things like that. And it was just a great little break from a kind of a hectic day of moving around, and I don't know about you, but getting that, the people are really appreciative that we were out giving away panetones, and getting that much appreciation is actually a little bit overwhelming and uncomfortable for me.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. You don't necessarily like to have people treat you like you're some kind of like a star, a superstar or something like that, just for doing something nice.
I felt like people would perceive from me that I felt like I was better than them.
Yeah,
Or that
correctly. That's right.
I
Yeah,
was some kind of a big wig because I was out here. I was some rich
yeah,
guy
like
giving these
yeah,
panetones, but it
yeah,
wasn't that. We just wanted to do something from the heart for the good people that make our business possible. And so, but I don't think people really felt that way. But it's hard for me to
It
accept
seems
that.
like one of the things that it seems like you've always tried to avoid, and I have too, when you go and do business in Peru. We're coming from the United States. We're gringos. We're sort of automatically perceived as being rich, and we
Yeah.
try to tread very lightly so that we don't come off as like looking down upon our partners.
Right.
right? And by bringing a panettone,
Or that we feel better than, or that,
yeah,
or
we
that they
so
should
it's
ever
almost
feel
like
less than.
correct. And so by bringing the panettone, you almost feel like it's like, hey, I got more money than you do, so I have to,
Shoving it right in their face.
yeah,
But
I have to buy this for you and give you a gift because I can afford it. You don't want it to come off like that.
yeah, like take bread, you poor people. And it's
Yeah.
exactly not that. It's the
No,
heart.
that's your own hang up too.
Yeah, it is. It is. But so it was
And
really nice.
I deal with that too, by the way. That's our own hang
It
up.
was really nice in the middle of that day to just have a non-fraught conversation with this wonderful older gentleman that had a lifetime of experience to impart. And but I'm old enough that we were basically speaking as equals.
Yeah.
And a couple of elders just sitting around comfortably speaking, and it made me feel very at home in the place, because the reality is I'm a college educated white boy from San Diego that was sitting in the middle of the Amazon jungle on a log bench leaning up against a mud house, speaking to an elderly gentleman that had lived there, an older cacao farmer that had lived there his whole life. We have almost nothing in common, and yet we had a lovely conversation as equals that and I felt right at home, and it really made me feel like I was in a place that I needed to be. So that was great.
This is where the Peruvian culture kind of has a leg up on American culture generally. Their hospitality makes you feel right at home.
Yeah, that's
in a way that you don't usually feel when you go to like an American household. I don't know. You kind of feel welcome to just kind of kick back and stay as long as you want to stay. You don't always have to be looking at your watch, wondering what time you're supposed to leave. And you're thinking about if you're overstaying, you're welcome. It's cool to just hang out. Well, since you just told this Panettone story, you might as well go ahead and tell us about the great Panettone fiasco, the year when we were supposed to hand out Panettones, but we didn't have enough, and we had to scramble to source Panettones at the last minute.
Well, wait a minute. I don't know if that's the funny story I wanted to. Why don't you tell that one, Adam?
Well, I wasn't there. This is you told it.
Yeah, I don't want to go too Panettonus. You wanted a funny story. I want to tell a different funny story.
All right, go ahead. You go ahead, because this is just I want you to tell me your story.
There's a lot of funny stories. So now let me figure out which funny story I want to tell. There's a lot of candidates. I think I may have told this before, but I'm going to tell it again. So Noe, my best friend down there, the president of the Cacao Growers Association, a visionary farmer, leader, businessman, and our partner in every way in the project. He has 4 brothers: Felix, Norbil, Juan, and the one who's down on the coast now, who's got his asparagus farm. Gosh, he worked for me, but I'm blanking out on his name. Anyhow, I have great friendships independent of my relationship with Noe with all of the brothers. Felix lives there in the same house, and he raises fighting roosters, fighting cocks, and has a farm. And Norbil works.
And that's what he does for a living. He raises roosters.
The roosters are an income for him. He trains
in addition to the farming.
Yeah, he takes them to like events, rooster fight events, and bets on them and wins money with them. He sells them. He trains other people's roosters. He also has a farm. He's a farmer. And he's a great guy. And I know Felix. Norbil and Juan both continue to work for the project.
Juan is an all-time character.
Juan is an all-time character. His nickname is Mono, which is monkey, and we've referenced him on the show before. He's this kind of larger-than-life guy, tough guy, smart guy.
Super smart guy. Great, a great talker.
He's a fully qualified civil engineer and architect without ever having studied it. And he's building the tallest building in Puerto Ciruelo right now, and that thing seems solid as a rock.
And also probably could have been a successful trial attorney as well.
That's right.
Because of his ability to argue.
Possibly a boxer or like a bouncer at a club, because he's kind of a roughneck as well. He's kind of got a little bit of everything going on. And just a highly opinionated guy. He's a character.
Yeah.
So
let me just tell something funny about that before we jump in. Okay. I remember when I was down there, I roasted him one day hard, because he had this habit of he would always show up late to work, but he was slick. because right when he would show up late, he would start barking off orders at people. I noticed it. He'd do it every day. He'd show up late, and then he'd come. He'd be like, "Hey, man,
And
look,
to be
hey,
clear,
sir."
he was not a supervisor.
No, he wasn't super. Hey, get that motorcycle ready. We got to get out of here. I know what are you doing in the fermentation. Come on now. All right, guys, let's look alike. And he would do it all as a ruse to hide the fact
That
that
he
he
showed
was
up
showing
late.
every single day. Yeah.
Yeah. Juan, I would consider a great friend of mine, and I would be happy to be in a foxhole with him at any time. And he's also the guy I came closest to coming to blows with, right there at the front when he kept questioning my judgment on something, and I finally had to say, "Hey, Juan, I'm the decider here. So what's it going to be? You want to work for this company or not? Because if not, you can screw, buddy." And he came and got in my face, and I got right in his face, and they had to separate us. And this is a guy I love.
Yeah, he's a classic, dude. He's a classic character.
The other brother is kind of known as being very sort of pedantic and officious, and kind of a real he's always bringing up the right way that you should do this, and kind of correcting everybody, and everybody kind of rolls their eyes about him. And then there's Norbill, and Norbill is kind of a laid back, lackadaisical. He's smart, and he works hard when he has to, and he lays back and is lackadaisical when he can do. And he's how can I describe Norbill other than to say like that? He's competent and smart enough, and he's a laid back kind of a guy. He doesn't overexert himself that I've ever seen on almost anything. But when he's working for the project and he's out picking up beans or working in the plant, and now he does some of the finance for the association, and he's competent at it all, but he just prefers to be kind of a low grade. He keeps his energy at a simmer, and I've never really seen it boil. And one day we were out doing a bean pickup in Osurco, and I've referenced this day before because it was the day that I forced myself to take this incredibly difficult bag of raw beans up the hill, slipping in the mud, etc. And I just would not give up because I knew that they would never, I would never hear the end of it on that day if I gave up. And I've told that story before.
So basically, you went down to a bridge to pick up cacao from a cacao farmer, and that required you to hike down a muddy hill. And then you've got this, like, am I telling this right? You've got this,
a muddy hill with a bunch of rocks in it that made it particularly slippery, and the bridge was actually washed out. Yeah. And the farmer couldn't get his mule across the bridge. So he very dangerously brought these bags. These things were hugely overloaded. These bags were normally meant for about 30 kilos, and this thing had like 45 or 50 kilos on it. And it was stretched tight like a sausage. And there was just a tiny little nubbin at the top where it was tied off. And it was kept, the cord that was tying it off kept slipping, and the little nubbin, it was like a man bun. It kept getting smaller and smaller as I was carrying this thing, and there was just nowhere to grip it. There was absolutely no.
You hit him with the cash when you paid him for it.
Yeah, I had already paid him for it, and he said, "Don Brian, you've got to help me get it up there because I don't have anything." And he had his own bag, and he took off, walking confidently. And I started that way, but I got tired, and I was slipping and falling, and I couldn't get a grip on this thing. It's as big around as. I mean, it was, I could barely get my arms around it. I could barely get my arms around it. It was that big and puffy. I worked and worked and worked. It took me almost an hour to finally get it up there.
Well over 100 pounds.
This thing was definitely around 100, maybe 110 pounds, something like that. It was quite heavy. And I finally got it up there just with my last drops of energy, gasping, and laid the thing down and said, delivered in Spanish, and laid down on the floor.
And all these guys are just standing around watching you?
All these guys are standing around watching me, and they all kind of, they were sort of sarcastically went, "Great, you delivered a bag of cacao." But I was really proud of myself.
The other guy took it straight up the hill, Brian.
Marched right up the hill, exactly. But I didn't give up and go crawling in there like a weasel requesting somebody to come help me bring this cacao, and I brought it myself. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna do that. Part of the story I'm not sure I've ever told before is flash cut to an hour or so later. I'm recuperating. I'm getting my wits about me again. And I'm drinking water, and I'm like passed out on the floor of this place for like half an hour. And the crew that we had with us that day was Adilson, and Oscar was there. Jorge was there, Norbill, and I believe either Willie or maybe Pipo, Jessica's brother. And I'm not sure exactly, but Norbill was there. And Norbill comes walking in the back and of the back door of this room that I was in. And it was raining super hard, and I was taking a refuge from the rain, and we were just about getting ready to go. and Norville comes walking in. I've told you before, one of the great things about Campo is the fruit. It's amazing fruit. And Norville comes walking in with these mandarin oranges. And he said, "Hi, Gringo, I found this tree with these amazing mandarin oranges. You got to try these." And I'm like, "Oh, fantastic. Let me get up." I love the fruit. And so I had already eaten some bananas.
And I've heard
like
you mention the mandarin oranges many, many times.
Alima. So
Yeah.
he tosses me one of the mandarin oranges, and I whip out my knife and I cut some grooves in it, and I start peeling it. Ah, God, this thing smells amazing. Open it up, take out the skin, pop a couple of segments in my mouth, bite in with gusto.
Oh, he tricked you.
It was the sourest, most acidic.
Did he trick you? Was it a joke? Did he trick you?
Yes. As I do this, I go, "Oh no!" And Norville and the other guys burst out laughing.
Beautiful.
Just absolutely beside themselves, with overcome with laughter. And they're gasping. I'm like, "Oh my God." I'm thinking, who would do that? And I look up and Norville's like, I got you, Gringo. And he could not have been happier with it. The only time I've ever seen Norville remotely that happy was when he got me with the mandarin orange. And to this day, every time I see Norville, he's like, "Hey, you want some fruit, Gringo?"
Yeah, that's hilarious, dude. That's great.
8 years later, again, it made me feel good because they clearly like me. It's like the old elementary school rules.
Hey,
if they didn't feel like we were actually friends, they wouldn't dare to play a joke on me. Like,
this is something
it made me feel good.
This is something I think women don't know about men. The way that men show each other affection is by beating the crap out of each other.
That's right.
So if a dude starts busting your chops or runs a practical joke on you, or harms you in some way that everybody finds funny, that means they like you.
And it also showed some real strong backbone by Norville, because most guys didn't have the confidence to really lay one on the boss.
Yeah, but that team out there that you had was a good team.
Yeah,
a good team. Y'all were
friends. But anyhow, once I recovered and got some of the acidic, sour taste out of my mouth, I laughed. I couldn't laugh enough, and to this day, it's a funny joke between Norville.
That's a hilarious story, dude.
Oh, he got me, but I mean,
and of course, because you were so tired, too.
I was like, "Oh, the refreshing power of just a mandarin orange, and the kindness."
And who whips out a knife to peel an orange? Come on, man. You were showing off with that knife.
No, it's got a thick rind. Then this particular, it had a thick rind, and so
I was here. A mandarin orange. Pull out the blade, start cutting it up. Let me show you guys.
I didn't throw it in the air. I didn't throw it in the air and use my machete like a fruit ninja or anything. Come on.
Let me show you fellas a thing or two about some blade work.
Oh boy. But he got me absolutely properly. And it was notable enough because I was in such a prone position. Like he could, I really like the fact that instead of giving me a hand up when I was on the floor recovering from this crazy ordeal I'd gone through, he thought, now's the time. Now's the time.
That's a great time to run a joke on a guy.
To get him with the mandarin. Absolutely.
Yeah, all right, bro. Well, hey, I think we're going to be running short on time here. So let's go ahead and sign it off. Thank you for your stories, bro. Beautiful.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to relate them. I hope everybody gets a sense of what it's like to live and work in the Campo, and hopefully at some point, in the near future, we're going to have some kind of infrastructure to be able to take some people down there and start actually letting people see this for themselves. A lot of people think this can't be real, but it's all 100% real, and we can actually show you as soon as we get some rooms built down there.
Yeah, and traditionally we've only taken wholesale clients down there, and they stay in High End, which is a city that's between an hour and a half and 2 hours away. But to have our actual online and in-shop customers be able to go out to Campo, honestly, I dream someday of being able to get visas for the cacao farmers and have them come work in our kitchen at some point in the future. But that could be way in the
100%. Yeah, 100% agree. I kind of envision this tourism thing as like what's that? The submarine that recently went down to the Titanic.
Something
like that. Yeah, we're going to charge a premium price, and we're going to use. We're going to not kind of skirt around the existing safety rules because it stifles innovation. And
well, you know what we do? Yeah, we have
to see how that goes.
We have the people travel down the Chinchipe in a submergible.
There you go. Down in the river. Submersible, yeah, that's right. But we're gonna use a material that we'll use balsa wood, and duct tape instead of actual metal. Yeah, that's a great way to go. Yeah, absolutely. So, and last thing I wanted to remind everybody, if you're in the Pacific Northwest and you decide to come to our store, it's getting warm, everybody, and we got soft serve. We should just put that out there right now.
Oh, bro,
We have soft serve ice cream, and it is absolutely delicious.
And in particular, the chocolate soft serve is
I had some
outrageous.
yesterday, and I brought some over here to the office for Graciela and Anna, and I also took some home for my lovely Peruvian wife and my 8-year-old son. And I got to tell you, that chocolate soft serve is a smash.
Javier, bro. Javier.
So good.
Our chocolatier Javier
knows what he's doing. I was hoping to get over there and get some of the fabled mango or mixed berry flavors, but there was just chocolate and vanilla. But my goodness,
in the factory,
absolutely delicious. I was at the factory. Yes,
yeah,
it was in both places. So anyhow, if anybody's in the area and you want something refreshing that also has that great taste of our chocolate, you can come and get soft serve in our store, and you will not be disappointed. It's
yeah, and if you really want a dark chocolate or a milk chocolate fix, but you don't want to ship chocolate to your house because it's going to melt because we don't use warm weather packaging.
Correct.
Consider the new nut butters. Ideally, we want them to melt on the way, and then you put them in your pantry, and they set back up at room temperature. Right. If they melt, because I have a jar in my house now. If it melts, like in your car because it's hot out when you're driving it home, or if it's hot and it melts on the way to shipping, and then you let it set up in a room temperature pantry, that's how we designed it to be. It comes out perfect. It comes out.
Well, we have a crew of food scientists, and we do some like molecular analysis. We run the DNA on this thing, and we've designed it, genetically from the ground up, from the molecules up to melt en route. So you're right.
If you, Bob, for anybody who may have ordered that, if it showed up hard, I'd recommend just letting it sit and putting it in your car and just driving around with it for a day, and then bring it back to your house.
Like a baby that refuses to go to sleep. Put this nut butter in the backseat of your car. Make sure it's got some direct sunlight, and just drive it around.
Hey man, when I had my first kid, I took so many I would drive the parking lots and just drive around the parking lot just to get the baby to fall asleep.
I walked around the block with my kid in a stroller many times in Cajamarca, and that's not a great place for a stroller. That's that swaying motion. But sometimes the bounciness will actually lull them to sleep. So yeah.
Or sometimes when they're leaned back at an incline and you're pushing them straight uphill, and the blood kind of flows up to the back of their head. That helps too.
Absolutely. Well, everybody, we really appreciate you listening today. FortunatoChocolate.com is the website. Adam Pearson is the website and retail guru that makes it all happen. Brian Horsley is the operations maven that brings you the cacao beans, and together we are the Chocolate Bros.
Chocolate Bros. Check us out at www.fortunatochocolate.com. If you're in the Seattle area, come visit us in our shop in Issaquah. Saturday mornings is when we'll be around together.
That's right. Come in and experience all the spicy goodness of this podcast, but even more so.
It's basically a 5-hour podcast in person.
Oh my gosh, it's scintillating.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you for your time. Brian, go ahead and sign us off with a jingle.
Fortunato, yum.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.